Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to the Confluential Live. If you're new here, I'm Kyler Cheatham, joined by Adam Cheatham. We're from the Confluential, a system architecture firm that focuses on technology strategy in heavy industry or complex businesses. So that's what we'll be talking about today with an AI lens of we bought AI, now what do we do? Or we get that we need AI, now what do we do? And that's a lot of conversations that we've been having in the marketplace with our current clients, with our prospective clients, and then also at just industry conferences. It seems to be the main theme of like, we get it, right? Like we need AI, but what does that actually mean for us and our business from a prescriptive standpoint? So just a few logistical details on the live. So we are live on a variety of different channels: Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. We do these lives every Friday. If you're coming from our TikTok lives that we do Tuesdays and Thursdays, welcome. We're excited you're here. If you're not on those lives, feel free to follow me, Kyler Cheatham, on TikTok, and you can join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays to talk as well. But just a lot of confusion in the marketplace around AI. So we want to kind of talk through what are some tactics to really tighten that up or understand what your options are from a high level standpoint. So with that, drop where you're joining us from today. We can see all of the chat comments. They aggregate on the screen here for us. And a lot of this is about what the conversation is in the marketplace, because right, two businesses are created equal when it comes to their overall AI strategies. So being able to share what people are experiencing, successes, failures, is really the point of this type of conversation. So with that, I'll let Adam introduce himself while you guys kind of let us know where you're joining from, and then we'll go from there. So good morning, Adam.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is you are joining us from. My name is Adam Cheatham, I'm the CEO of the Confluential, and this is an exciting topic today because it's kind of a now what conversation. And what I like about it is now what can often be kind of a oh no, what do we do now what? Where we bought AI, we have no idea what we're doing with it, and that's okay too. There's a lot involved in this conversation. And somebody asked me the other day, how do you differentiate what you should use AI for
Mhm.
from what you should use other software for? And my answer is generally you have to have the same process and rigor for knowing what you're doing, right? You need to make sure that you're using it for a reason. We like the words intent and purpose. You have to intentionally use AI for a specific purpose, right? That's not just AI. That's anything you do in your business, right? You intentionally do things for a specific purpose, and
Mhm.
AI fits into that same space. So excited about this conversation today, and looking forward to it.
Me too. Yeah, I think that's the big conversation is like, what does that mean for our organization, and also like what are the all of the options in which we can buy. So it kind of moved from this time in 2025 where we had a lot of exploratory AI budgets, we had kind of an understanding, and then we also have a whole nother level of this, which is really like the birth of core AI policies in the organization. So what are you allowed to use and what are you not allowed to use? It's kind of
Yeah.
gone from like, let's go for it, let's innovate, let's have social engineering, and then like, oh man, oh, we need some security parameters because all of our proprietary code is being popped into open AI systems. And that's been a big conversation as well. So I think that's kind of a good to take to come to this. So the first thing I think we get in is defining like what you need for AI. And so many people are stuck in this step. Like we get it. And then, we got the executive team out here going over to talk to industry specialist AI agents. We've got the, PMO team. I just talked to a business yesterday that's like, whoa, like we can't just have agents on top of like absolute trash technology. So what are we supposed to do here? And I think that's the confusion. So how do you help organizations like this kind of drill down into what the heck should AI be doing for you? Because we can't just have AI to have AI.
Well, and I think that goes back to those same two words, intent and purpose, right? What do we why are we doing this? So you bought AI, okay. So what's it doing? I don't know. It's making our business better. That's the wrong answer, right? What is it doing? You should know what you're spending your money on. I don't care if it's AI or bar stools for the kitchen. Doesn't matter. You should know what you're spending your money on. So when we think about how we match this up, we start thinking about pain points that are solvable, especially that are solvable using a particular tool, right? If you want to kind of take the solution and apply it to a problem, and that's not uncommon. AI is kind of a tool that needs a problem to solve, right? We're going to use AI. What are the places that this will be most effective, right? It's kind of like saying, I have a new tool. I have a new drill.
Mm-hmm.
What can I use it for? Okay. You could use it for a lot of things. What you can't use it for is for hammering a nail,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's not apply AI towards that. Is this a stationary drill? Does it have a specialty in materials for different types of bits? Is this? And we recently watched Armageddon with our sons. Are we drilling a hole in an asteroid? Is it that type of drill? Like what type of drill are we talking about? Right? What is the purpose of this tool? Um, and then you start to figure out how we use this tool to solve that problem, right? So you can think about it that way. That's fine. I tend to like to identify the problem and then find an appropriate right size solution for it first, and then if that answer is AI, then great. But with the advent of AI and the want to be creative and everything, I think it's fine at this point to say we need to use AI. We know that that's going to be a differentiating tool. The same way people asked decades ago at this point, we need to use the internet for our business. How? Why? Like a lot of companies went straight to the well, we need to have a web page. We need to have a homepage for our business, but not all businesses did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of businesses decided we need to use the internet for something else, and then all right, everybody's getting these web pages, these homepages, things they're online storefront, if you will, and so that became a bit more of a standard practice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Once upon a time, people were saying, right, but we have the yellow pages.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we need a web page, right? So there are different tactics that will come out of this that people start to settle in on. A lot of it's right now is content generation, meeting notes, and action items that come from teams and stuff like that. But we got to understand that piece of it. What I think is also starting to really catch is acceptable use policies, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that I'm interested in seeing where this goes because I like comparing this more to the bring your own device movement in
Mm-hmm.
offices, right? Once upon a time, you had people who had these cell phones that had access to the internet and they could play games and text messages and stuff like that. And businesses said, not on my watch, they don't. You can't bring those devices to our facilities. And now, how did that turn out? Right, everybody has their cell phone in their pocket. It's just kind of a thing that we don't have to think about anymore, right? You have a guest network. Most areas do. If you want to connect, if you're an employee, you connect to the guest network. A lot of places do allow for that. Shoot, we got our work emails on our phones at this point. They've become a
Mm-hmm.
part of our work tool set
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to something to be restricted. And so, acceptable use policy will evolve over time to reflect something a bit more indicative of the usefulness of the conversation. But it is important to start thinking about how do we want people using AI at work, and what are some of our restrictions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to unpack that kind of in the latter half, or if anyone has questions on it now, definitely drop them on the comments and we'll shift. But I think there's a few big things that we need to pick up on, like the strategic piece. So what happens, right, if you were involved in this big, digital transformation project where you were looking at things like data lakes and core, just overall operational software strategies, And then all of a sudden we hear about AI agents and the team is like, whoa, like we're not even like through this one piece of getting our core operations right. Seems like we're doing a lot of dropping of agents on things because they are the new kind of hot trend in the marketplace. How
Yeah.
would you go about reminding people that we still need core operating software even with AI agents? And a lot of that conversation around like, can they become your core operating system or something? Well, maybe, right? If you have those behaviors in place.
Yeah, I'd say that your technology ecosystem is like a well organized team. There are certain roles for certain systems and applications, and there are certain roles that are not appropriate for certain ones, at least not yet, right? AI is something that serves smaller purposes. You start to look at ERP systems, for example, and where the agents are. They're everywhere, right? You got ERP systems that have dozens of agents, right? Why? Well, because that's the capacity constraint, right? Agents need something that's more truncated. They aren't something that understands the whole of the system, at least not today. So you have to be able to think about it that way. When we start thinking about something that's an ongoing implementation, ERP isn't going away, MES isn't going away, CRM isn't going away. They're going to be augmented by AI types of tools. And so we need to make sure that we are thinking about that type of an approach, right? Augmentation, not replacement. At least, again, at least say, who knows what AI will do? I think that's part of the challenge is that everybody's like, well, what if we do this and then AI changes everything and it does this instead, and we are committed to this application? I would say that timing that decision is less important than getting into the market and having your investment live. So if you have an ongoing project and your thought process is, well, we started this before AI became a real thing, and then we started we got to put an AI in it. Like, right, what you just did is you doubled your timeline and complicated your project and increased your risk of failure. Finish what you started and plan for AI. You got to do both.
That's a lot. I'm taking notes as always. I think I mean, it's a lot to consume as an organization, especially with, the modern IT department that might not have that overall holistic organization or, right, the internal competencies. So can
Mhm.
you talk about the needs of, a modern IT department that's going to manage this type of AI agent ecosystem?
Well, I think that the starting point is an acceptable use policy, right? Like at the end of the day, IT is the type of organization that operates best within guidelines. And there's innovations where they'll want to push the boundaries of things, and that's fine. But um, being able to say this is what's acceptable, so we have a set of tools that people can use, I think is important, right? If your AI team on your IT team is responsible for enabling the business with agents and tools, and they've got to figure out all the litany of different types of agents out there and how to apply them, we have no expertise in our level of application, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's figure out how to use one, maybe two, right? And let's start with that. Let's make sure that we are getting our founding principles on this right. What does our
Mhm.
data look like? As opposed to looking so broadly at the horizon that we forget about what's right in front of our face, right? So I think that that's a key component of it. I like this question on the idea of moving from experimental AI to real operational impact. I
Yeah.
think this is the answer is it's a mind shift
Yeah.
set. If you're just experimenting, you're not doing anything. And IT needs to add value, not through experimentation. They're not R&D for most organizations. So we need to tie it to a purpose and an intentional thought process. And I do think that the best way of doing that is to make a commitment to one or two tools. And I think we're going to see a whole lot more of that. Yeah, Claude is great. ChatGPT is great. Copilot's great. Perplexity is great. Blah, 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 blah. You have a bunch of them, right? Pick one. What's more like you? What do you think you're going to get the most value out of? If you are a data heavy, code heavy organization, Claude's probably better for you, right?
Mhm.
If you are a more content oriented organization, Chat's probably better. If you're more of a research oriented, Perplexity is probably better. If you're a large organization that does a lot of things, there's a good chance that you're going to lean towards Copilot. And what we've seen a
Mhm.
lot of with our clients is, it's integrated with all of our Microsoft products.
Yeah.
OpenAI is the back end of it anyway.
Yeah.
So we literally have clients who have said your acceptable AI tool is Copilot.
Mhm. Yeah.
Period. Full stop. Nothing
Mhm.
else.
Mhm.
And that's their acceptable. That's a core of their acceptable use policy. So when we think about moving from experimental to real operational impact, you really have to go after it from a perspective of what are we tactically going to achieve, not what can we find out.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it. So we'll get to Copilot because I have some questions for you, but let's go ahead and
All right.
let's first look at this. So this question from YouTube is a great one. How much does the data structure need to change before even buying AI? I even want to take it back one step. A lot of people want to look at AI and still have zero understanding of what their current state of data is or the data that's required. How do you identify that or start that in an organization that might not have that data maturity?
Well, so part of it, you can identify that as a problem and send an agent after it, right? There's a bit of that that could be useful. But you got to be realistic in your own hygiene, right? We've also got who owns data quality and how's it actually enforced and sustained. That's related to this same conversation. Your data needs to be useful to AI. AI is a mechanism that is going to use the information that it has to help make things happen. If the information is bad, then the AI agent is going to be able to do anything smart with it.
Mhm.
You take an idiot and give him a high class, sophisticated tool, and then you're surprised that they can't figure out how to use it or how to turn it on. That's what you're doing if you're giving an AI agent bad data. You're giving an idiot a sophisticated tool and expecting them to know how to use it. Right? That's just not going to happen. It's not reality. But what we think about when it comes to data is I don't know that your structure itself needs to change a ton. It just needs to be clean and it
Mhm.
needs to be consistent. That's
Mhm.
that's what I would say. So when we start thinking about those bits of it, that's what we should think about. We talk about the question that's related to that and who owns data quality. I think everybody should own
Yeah.
data quality, right? This isn't a one team. Yeah, you could assign it to the data warehouse team, but what are they going to do? They're going to say, "Well, here's the bad data,"
Mhm.
and who are they going to ask to fix it? The business that created the data, right?
Mhm.
So you own your own data elements, and when data is something that is this nebulous thing that the organization has, we have data. Who owns data? Everybody does. It's which is part of the challenge with keeping it clean because you have the old moniker: if everybody owns it, nobody owns it.
Mhm.
That's bad discipline on data governance, and we need to have structure for what it is data can be, and then um, structure for keeping it that way.
Yeah. It's all very, very good points. Excellent. So let's talk about Copilot, okay? Because everybody wants to talk about it. So what we're seeing in the marketplace, just for like a little bit of background, and this, is we're not singling out any one organization. We see this from a lot of the organizations we support that Copilot is quote unquote the safe option, right? Because we've got maybe M365, and we think everyone with an Outlook license needs a Copilot license or a seat on Copilot. And that's kind of our AI initiative. And we feel like because it's Microsoft, then that means we're not going to have, a huge data breach, or we don't have any open AI areas in our overall security infrastructure. And a lot of these different kind of misunderstandings about what Copilot is capable of, or even the use case of each user level of Copilot. And just for an idea, right, we've got Copilot that comes for free with some of the Microsoft licenses. And then we also have the paid Copilot seats, which Microsoft is obviously pushing very hard for in the marketplace. And just to share, some of the numbers that we've done for like research around it, only about 3% of Microsoft users, right, of M365 users are on a paid Copilot seat. Does that mean it's bad? No. It just means that we don't have the majority on that. But yet their overall revenue has increased in that area of the business over 160% year over year. So we're seeing those licenses fees, and all of those different pieces of that subscription really benefit Microsoft's bottom line. So we understand the reasons for that, but a lot of different organizations are saying, okay, ChatGPT's out. Like even, on our TikTok lives, we have some, big four people in there that are saying like we've gotten all of ChatGPT totally locked down, but Copilot somehow is okay. And I think there's just some misunderstandings around that. So one, is that something that you've seen as well? And two, what would your reaction be to an organization being like, we're going only Copilot for RA, and then that's going to be like our collaborative bot initiative?
I think you need to look at who you are as an organization, right? There are organizations that can and do say Copilot is it, and other tools are not acceptable, and we have the capacity and the capability of locking those down. Ish, right? So if you're logged into our network, then we can block traffic. At the end of the day, though, where's it? I could have chat on here, right? I have any AI on this thing, Gemini and all that stuff, and you'll never know the difference. So I think that there's some of that that's important, but at the same time, that you create barriers. Yeah, if I say Copilot is our thing and that's it, and I'm using Copilot because I think that this is what people are going to find themselves in the situation of more often, then ChatGPT is our one thing. And nothing else is allowed because Copilot is already on your computer. Sorry. Good luck with that one. But the idea that I'm chasing here in my head is, at the very least, if you say, I'm going to lock it down on company hardware and say, this is our tool. You create at least an outside process for somebody. Now I got to send an email to myself to put it on another device and then put it in a different. Now I'm going down this intentional workaround path that I think is a barrier to making mistakes that we need to have in place. Are you going to avoid it completely? No. But at the same time, you can do a better job of at least creating barriers to sharing confidential things. So people at least have to intentionally do something stupid, which will prevent them from usually doing it, right? I want to come back though from a perspective of this question: did Copilot get approved because it's the right tool or because it felt like the safest? And I want to use your analogy of 3% of people are actually paying for this Copilot license. And I want to say out loud, what percentage of people were using Microsoft Teams at the beginning of the pandemic?
Yeah.
It was more than, I bet it was lower than 3%. I'll bet it was more like 0. Right? Because it was terrible. I don't know how many of you listen.
I mean, it still is. Let's be so clear on that.
It's not worse than Zoom anymore. It is far more effective at a broader range of things. And so it is now the standard. That is the advantage that Microsoft is going to have with Copilot.
Uh-huh.
So I think, and this is a personal opinion, the Copilot get approved because it's the right tool because it felt like the safest. I think, can the safest tool be the right tool? Right? It's Copilot's not going anywhere. It's on every single PC in your organization that's using Windows. All of them. It's
Mhm.
already there. So
Mhm.
our adoption curve is pretty low. We don't have to do anything new. We're already using it, so it would probably be harder to lock it down than to just make that exception. And
Mhm.
it is powered by OpenAI, which is chat. If you're not paying attention, ChatGPT is owned by OpenAI, right? So
OpenAI.
that's not to say that OpenAI doesn't save some of its best things for itself, right? But at the end of the day, I think that it's possible that Copilot gets approved because it is the right and the safest tools for organizations, and that's not a bad thing. At the end of the day, the consolidation starts at some point, but we'll have to see where it goes.
So, okay, let's take it from a different standpoint. You you have Copilot, right? Already on all of your machines, as you mentioned. We're a big, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company. That's probably going to make sense for us. How do you actually use it? Like how do you ensure that you're not, just buying all of these licenses and then, next year, 12 months later, you're like, oh damn, like we spent seven figures just on Copilot. What are we doing with it? And everyone's like, what do you mean? Like what? So how do you kind of stop that
Yeah.
spend from happening and look at it as something that's not going away, right? But we still, just because it's there doesn't mean we should, right?
How many of your users have Visio or Microsoft Project or whatever, right? Um, and the answer is how many of them need it? Yeah. So how many of your users that's how you answer that question. You have to find out who should we pay for these licenses? Who are our actual users? And that's what we need to figure out, right? Am I going through and creating meeting notes or putting a Word document that's 40 pages long and say give me a summary? Those are not power users, right? So, but am I taking it and using it for something more sophisticated? That's where you start to think about the licensing costs on it, and that's just a part of the conversation that organizations are going to have to figure out and have, right? So, who gets Visio and who doesn't? Who gets Microsoft Project and who doesn't? Maybe the answer is none of them. We're going to use the free version, and we're just going to go at it that way. I can save a project plan as a PDF, or I could build one in Excel. Cool, done. I don't need Microsoft Project. I could build process flows in PowerPoint. Cool, done. Easy enough. Um, but if I'm a heavier user, I'm actually managing dependencies and tasks on project management. And maybe I do need a license for that, and I can PDF it to share it with other people. Maybe I do. I do want to create appropriate swim lane process maps that are sophisticated. Maybe I do need Visio. Fine, get them a license, and again, we can PDF those. We can send them as JPEGs, and people can still see those in Edge and stuff like that. I just think that at the end of the day, who should we spend money on and for what reasons is a simple business calculus.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a consideration that a lot of people are kind of talking about in the marketplace, and you got to understand everyone's different understanding and agenda in that, but you are in charge of your business, right? Like
Yeah.
you've got to be in charge of any tools that you own. To
Mhm.
Adam's point, it can never be outsourced, or you will end up paying that premium and not understand what you're buying, and then all of a sudden be in a situation where one, nobody's using it, and you're paying a ton for it, or two, it got out from under you because you didn't understand like the back end traceability of that, and then we are having security issues or anything like that within this.
Well, I think that this question, how do businesses decide what AI touches and what it doesn't? Allowing it to touch everything would be a nightmare. This is goes to the same conversation, right? Um, what are we doing that's proprietary that we don't want shared, right? At the end of the day, you have kind of a scale, right? You have the what do we care about, and what do we not, right? If it's just regular, well, I'm writing business requirements for a normal process that everybody does, like how do I create an invoice? Sure, use AI to write requirements for that. You don't need to pay for that. You could use it. You don't even care if they use your questions to train other agents. That's totally fine. And then, of course, you read it, and then you do smart things with it, right? It's not they wrote it and we're done. The human in the loop is a key part of this always. But you have the super simple stuff that it doesn't matter if everybody on the internet has access to the questions that you ask, right? I think of it as from a free AI perspective. If it's something, is think about it like text messages, right? If it's something that showed up on the internet, would you be all right with that?
Yeah. It's
Um,
forever. It's
right?
forever.
'Cause it is, right? And it's not just that the transcript is there. It's the you're also going to train their agents based on your questions, right? So
Uh-huh.
that information is lost to you from a propriety perspective. The next
Absolutely.
piece is what do you want to be proprietary that you don't want to be
Mhm.
used to train
Exactly.
agents, but isn't super secret sauce, right? You cannot separate the thought process that is, oh well, we didn't use it to train our agents. Sure, right? I didn't use your specific data to train an agent for somebody else, but it's there, it's in it, it's not going away at that point, right? So there's a at that point I would simply say if it's protected and you don't want it out on the internet, but it's not super top secret, that's when you need a license, right?
Yeah.
There's a step after that, which is the super secret stuff
Mm.
that you don't want in an AI agent at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
Period.
Mhm.
A lot of organizations, for example, consider their pricing models
Mhm.
and their engineering um, designs and stuff like that, their research and development. I wouldn't want any of that on the internet. I
Yeah.
want it in my engineers' brains, and that's why I'm paying them money for that, right?
Yeah.
So your secret recipes should not be in AI. Your secret pricing that is a part of your competitive advantage should not be in AI. And maybe that's the best way to put it. If it's a part of your competitive advantage, it shouldn't be in AI.
Mhm. Yep.
You know?
Absolutely. So let's dig into this one. So we talked about strategies, right? We talked about what is it's looking like from an overall vendor standpoint. What about building? All right. So we've got a lot of conversations about like, how do I vet these new industry agents. I was just talking to a client about this yesterday about like, hey, we've got these agencies that are newer that are coming saying like we've done this for your industry. And to which I reply, well, then they're gonna have to prove it, just like anybody else, right? Like on your due diligence, like are you going to check references? How are you making sure that you're looking at your investment just like you would with anybody else, right? Just because it's a newer piece of technology doesn't mean that all of those guardrails go away. But there's also a big conversation about like, okay, if I want real secure AI, if I am a heavily compliant industry, do I build that in house? So talk us through that decision.
Well, I mean, you had to have a power, you have to have an engine in one way or another. So there's a bit of that involved in this, which is we can build workflows and we can power them with AI. That's one thing. That's different than having somebody else build me AI. I would say um, this comes down to what are we using it for, right? If we're using it for something like um, creating an order based on a conversation with a client, I wouldn't worry about that being somewhere else, right? Are we worried about driving machinery? and routing production based on our super secret recipes and bills of materials, I would want that in house. So those are the bits and pieces of it that I would consider as important for this. So would it be better for organizations to build their own AI? Sure, in a lot of cases it is. Do you have a capacity for that? There's a good question there. So it just depends.
Okay. Well, so how do you do that?
Answer to the question. Building gives
Yeah,
you.
right.
It also means that you own everything that comes with it, right? You
Yeah,
got to train that. It belongs to you. It's now your problem.
right. I think like businesses are like, yeah, yeah, that sounds good. How do we do that? So
Right?
so I think that's the understand. I mean, it sounds good to build your own ERP, right? And have all full control over it. But
And
does that mean it's a good idea? No, not necessarily, right? So, talk us through what you would need as far as just even starting
oh
on.
man. Well. Oh man, I don't even know where to start on that. You need data. You need some good algorithm scientists and engineers. You need software engineers, right? There's a coding involved in this, right? We build our own agents, and you need a tool for creating workflows. You need a tool for creating an agent. You need to know what types of statistical modeling you're using, and all of that stuff, right? You need engineers. Is really
Mhm.
what you need.
The
Not
little engineers, not
developers.
the big ones.
Engineers, software engineers. There's a difference
Mhm,
between a software engineer and a developer. I
mhm,
don't mean to offend anybody out there, especially those whose titles are developers. But at the end of the day, one of them writes code that is well understood and is easy to test, and one of them creates something that's wildly different in designing an architecture and a software package that's just different. There are people who build bridges and there are people who design bridges. And the engineers design them and then they oversee the building of them. The people that lay the bricks are not engineers. And that's okay, right? I'm not, this isn't
yeah,
to
no,
put anybody down. You need people that can figure out the design elements of this and be able to really go through what it is it
mhm,
takes to build it.
mhm. Alright, so that's going to be a core need or understanding, right?
Mhm.
So, when we go through something like that, it's not something that we can just drop as an executive team on, an IT team or a team of developers that don't have that skill set. Does that mean that's not something that you can plan on and shoot for and look at? Absolutely not. It should always be something that's kind of on your option list when it comes to AI, right?
Yeah.
So if we're in a situation where we're looking at agents specifically, because this is how, right, it's gone in the marketplace from an evolution of, CEOs in 2025, 2024, we're standing on stage at all team meetings. We're like, this is the year of AI, period. Right. So everyone's kind of like, what does that mean? And then we got to the point of like, just do the things with AI, like just see what we got, see what we can do. And then we got to the point of, oh, this isn't making us any sort of money. We need to actually look at what we can leverage to make us real money from AI. We can't just spend all of this money on something that we don't understand. And now we're to the point of, oh, it's definitely AI agents. Like that's going to be the key to success.
And it'll
Um,
definitely be something else a different day, right? So
right. Yeah, way to just bring down my question there. Just shoot it right when it was rising. But it's not something that's an understanding that everybody has. So when it comes to AI agents, what are you talking to in specifically maybe complex manufacturing or something like that? What is the understanding that you're going to need to have if you have this agent obsession for this year in your technical strategy?
so if you're obsessed with building an AI agent, what you should become obsessed with is building an AI agent workflow, right? This is the piece of the puzzle that's missing. Where are we gonna put our agent? What's it gonna do? It's gonna do AI, right? That's what our agent's gonna
The
do.
AI thing. Yeah.
But that's not enough, right? What is it going to do? What is this job? And again, we've talked about this time and time again from a perspective of correlating AI agents with job descriptions, right? They're like an artificial person. It doesn't replace the person, right? I still believe strongly in the human in the loop type of stuff. Especially the more I use AI, the more I am obsessed with the human in the loop side of things, right? Um, but at the end of the day, where does it fit into what process? And then you create a workflow around it and you say, this is where we need an agent. And then you ask, do we have the right agent for the right job? The same way you would ask, do we have the right person for the right job? And did we ask that agent to do more than one job that it can't do, or are we appropriately assigning responsibility to it? This is where we break things down, right? Do I need one, two, three agents and one to rule them all? Maybe, probably. That's a different type of challenge, though. So we got to figure those things out along the way, and this is where you should be asking for help if you need it. Right? There's a more like an artificial golden retriever, an artificial boxer.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Well,
I think I said I think they're referencing like one of my TikTok videos where I said it's like the golden retriever of like the organization where, it should be looked at as one of the most simple structures and boring area of them.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and again, at the end of the day, your golden retriever will do what you allow it to. Right?
Mhm.
Your AI will do what you
Yeah.
allow it to. And if you allow it to do too much, it'll do too much and it will have problems, right? It will have behavioral issues.
Mhm.
If you take the list of things that it is allowed to do and you shrink it, um, it will work much more effectively. You can
Absolutely.
you can quote me on that. That's for sure. The
Yeah.
same as the dog, right? Why does she do that? Like, because she's been allowed to do it.
Yeah. Why does she eat the bed? Our boxer ate our mattress, which is just the most insane thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, and
Oh,
again, you can compare that to I mean, she was allowed to have unsupervised time walking around our house, right? Just like
we let
the governance of these agents. And a lot of times they're going to do things that you were like, that wasn't even in like my aura of thinking.
never
Um,
just like you have AI robots that freak out and
yeah.
flail their arms and things all over the place. It's like something strange happens and ends up in some little squirrely line of code and some
Mhm.
little neuron somewhere that says, eat the mattress. Eat it. Do it.
That one, yeah, I absolutely could never understand like why
No
you would
blankets on top of it and the sheets and stuff stop you
exactly.
from getting to the good stuff.
It's like one massive hole too, like not even the side of the mattress.
No, no,
The
no.
the you can
Right,
dig.
right on my side of the bed, of
Yeah,
course.
exactly. Like you dig into it in that area. But, I think as funny and as simple as the example is, the goal is to simplify
Yeah.
agents, right? And so a lot of times though, we see this stretch between everybody's pulling for this, this magic technology that's going to fix all of those different pieces, but the discipline of being able to have all of these strategies aligned are a huge piece of enabling that, as well as, which is my next question for you, the importance of the relationship between IT and the business. Um, she was a mole in her past life. She was an alien in her past life, or whatever she was. But the importance of the relationship between IT and the business to execute on these strategies, which a lot of times that alignment is still not there.
Oh,
And
it's
it's
missing.
something,
It's not a
yeah,
lot of times. It's like everywhere. This is
yeah.
pervasive. So let me break it down for you. We have a scenario where we need a very specific thing to do a very specific job. That very specific thing needs to be built by IT. That very specific job is within the business, which means that IT, in order to design this very specific thing, to do this very specific job, needs to understand this very specific job. Not just from a perspective of here are the 5 things, it's the what about the things before it? What about the things after it? What about the things after that and after that, right? There is an understanding that is necessary on how to build this thing. So when this thing does decide to tell its human who is in the loop to do this, and that human, as will happen from time to time, doesn't think and just presses the button. And I have in my head, and this way, way, way back in time, but the Homer Simpson episode where he works from home and he has a little drinking bird and he puts it on the yes. He goes yes, yes, yes. That's his AI, right? But he's not paying attention. He just sets it and forgets it, and the nuclear reactor basically blows up. We don't need that, but it's making decisions, based on what it's been told, and the human stops paying attention to it. Don't be Homer Simpson. Keep an eye on things. So as we come back to the concept, this thing that IT is building to do a very specific job, the person who builds that needs to understand it. The only way to thoroughly understand that with regularity is to have a positive relationship between IT and the business.
Mm-hmm.
If IT doesn't understand the business, then they can't possibly build effective tools.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to have conversations with the business on what the business needs and why. And then they need to seek to understand those bits and pieces. So IT has to lean into the relationship with the business. But the business also needs IT, right? IT needs to be able to say, this is how that works in technology. And I don't care how sophisticated you are as a business person, as a technical business person, the chances that you understand exactly how something can be built without being in IT are pretty low, right? You got ideas of how your system works and what it is the pieces are, but writing the actual code, building the actual algorithm, the workflows, not your job, which is fine. Let those people do their job. The business needs to understand that IT is trying to help build a solution and seek to understand what they're bringing to the table,
Mm-hmm.
which takes a relationship, right? So when the business says, I need this very specific tool for this very specific job, IT can rely on the success of the relationship that they have built
Mm-hmm.
to lean in and understand what is this piece and what are the upstream and downstream impacts. Then they build something and then they show it to the business. And the
Mm-hmm.
business says, that's not what I wanted. I needed this, that, and the other. And then IT says, right, but that's not how the technology works. It needs to work this way. And business says, that's not going to work for me. And they run off, right? That's a bad relationship. And that's on the business side, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
business not owning up to their side of it too. Because I think that there's a lot of times people paint me as the IT is responsible for having a positive relationship with the business. That's true, but the business can be the asshole too, right? Going and saying IT didn't build me what I wanted, so I'm going to go buy it somewhere else and then make them fix it for me when I break it and it wasn't what I wanted to begin with
Yeah.
is a bad business relationship. So it's got to be both sides. It's got to be both ways, and then you got to be able to stand them up together. And that's why that relationship is so important, because the only way to truly understand the other side is to have a positive relationship with them. And if you don't have a positive relationship with them, that will be painted in the context of cynicism and skepticism,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not healthy. Because
Absolutely.
now we don't trust it, and now we're not open-minded, and now we're not solutioning together. We're solutioning against each other, and it's a competition rather than a partnership.
And there's no way, right? Like you can be at the technical level that you want to tell your board about or your investors about or anything like that about. On the leadership side, if you don't have that collaboration internally. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? But it certainly has to be a mutual level of respect
Yeah.
on both sides, right? To be able to understand how to do that. I think the big question I have too is we want to put in all of these, new agents, Copilot, AI, all of these things. How does IT manage all of those at that point? If
Mhm.
they're not used to that, right? They're used to having like core systems, like 30-year-old green screens, right, that they manage and see. But now they have all of these different pieces. How does the modern IT department kind of show up for that?
That's a difficult question, and part of it is by staying on the front end of technology, right? There's nobody that writes in green screen anymore because that technology is dead. That's okay. Well, it's not dead. There are people who write it. They're hard to find and they are retiring. So it is nearly dead. COBOL is maybe a better example. There's nobody who writes in that anymore. Let's not get too beholden to the past. Let's stay on the front end of the curve, right? But let's not get crazy. We ended up buying HD DVD before we realize how things are going to shake out. Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think that's where that conversation starts. Being on the understanding, being current with your technology, the same way you should be. The business should be current on business trends in the marketplace and those types of things is important, so that you can then understand what is out there. Because if the business does understand it, because they're paying attention to the technology side of it better than you are, that's a problem.
Mhm.
Not because we don't have some folks in the business that are just technologically savvy and find themselves in a business role because that's their passion. That's fine. But at the end of the day, just because we have people in the business who can and do write code, in a lot of cases, that's not a bad thing.
Mhm.
Uh, we should still have some sense of IT being able to keep up with the times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a huge piece of being a modern IT leader too. Like a lot of times that's the difficult piece is that leadership is going to shape that vision. But a lot of times, especially in large organizations, they've grown up in the IT department. And now we don't have the ability to have any other kind of bigger business relationship because we haven't been there before. And ideally, that leader would see that opportunity. That's why they were selected for that position. And we would become, business partners as opposed to just, Captain No or the people in the basement that fix the computers and just stay in our lane, right? And but that's a big shift that a lot of people want to see from IT, but don't remember that that's like, going to accounting and being like, hey, why don't you do some marketing now? You really need to be focused on more marketing and do it. And that's a huge different shift from what they had done in the past. So thinking through that as leadership is going to be a big piece of this as start to sprinkle, whether you're looking at collaborative AI tools like Copilot or Gen AI tools like ChatGPT, or even on those types of things, there's still a technical tool that need to be overseen and have those guardrails and permissions, like our comments here on YouTube are talking about. Like what are those permissions? What are those user groups? And those are technical pieces that IT really needs to be involved in order to have a proficient strategy, right?
Yeah. Well, and let's keep in mind, AI agents are what they're trained on, right? And people today are shocked that ChatGPT talked somebody into believing that they had identified some super secret conspiracy and that they were and that you need to do something about this and you
Well,
have a
have you
role.
been reading my chat threads? Like what's happening?
Then you've been talking in your sleep. Um, but like, and then this person decides that they are the leader of some movement against a conspiracy theory that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Where does that come from? People were shocked by this. How could an AI do this? Well, it's trained on the internet,
Yeah.
right? How could you not think that Reddit was going to have an influence on how ChatGPT talks to people? How do you think it knows how people talk? it gets all that gaslighting behavior and all of that stuff from somewhere.
Yeah.
It gets it from us
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the internet and how we act. And that is the problem with trusting it. This is why human in the loop is more and more important every day.
Absolutely. People are talking about your secret TikTok accounts here.
Don't worry
So,
about it.
but in all, as we wrap up this live, I think the biggest piece that we want you to take from this is one, every AI strategy is different. Two,
Yeah.
you're responsible for the software that you buy and the team that you manage,
Yeah.
right? So we can't outsource all of this to, a new up and coming AI agency or whatever like that, but we can absolutely use with
Yes.
partners as long as we have good business sense, right?
Yep.
And then two, we need to support our teams. We need to make sure that we support our team. Sorry, there's a rogue dog outside of my window.
Oh, here we go.
I know, right? It's
I think
wild.
at the end of the day, if anybody listening to this wants one thing to take away from the conversation, it's purpose and intent. Do it intentionally with a specific purpose in mind.
Mhm.
That's what you should do. And with everything, right? So AI is no different. Don't get crazy about it.
Absolutely. So thank you all for the great comments in here. If you're watching after the fact, you absolutely can continue to leave comments and we still, always go through, aggregate those if you have questions, because a lot of these are going to be as unique, as your own DNA as a business. So feel free to message us like, hey, I have this of this, I'm considering this. We're always happy to just provide that feedback to the best of our ability. I also invite you guys to join our lives every Friday. It's, an informal conversation where we can just essentially have this format to really discuss what we're seeing and what you're seeing in the marketplace, as well as our lives on TikTok on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where you can ask any sort of questions on those as well. So thank you so much for being here. We hope you guys have a great weekend and we'll see you next week.